Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Back at you in Gloves Off. I'm Paul Buitrón, and I have a great guest, one of the pillars here in Texas, and one that kind of protected Laredo during COVID. Texas State Representative Tracy. How you doing? You doing good?
I'm fine, Paul. How are you today?
Good, good. It's good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. Last time I saw you was before the pandemic, and yeah.
I guess it was. It was right before the pandemic. I was in the middle of a big campaign, and in fact, the election was on March 3rd, and the big pandemic declaration was made the next week, March 10th, let's say, and everything shut down after that.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we're post-COVID, things are going. How do you see things throughout the state? How do you see the state helping? How do you see everything going on with small businesses, schools, everything?
Well, I'm hoping that the state will get out of the way and let them do what they know how to do with the small businesses, and let those people get back, completely back to work. And of course, they can now. I don't believe there's any COVID restrictions right now. But, I felt like, hindsight's 20/20, of course, but even at the time, you and I talked about it, and I felt like we should have taken a little bit slower approach to that. I mean, turns out nearly everybody I know ended up getting sick before it's over with one version of COVID or another anyway.
Absolutely. You saw it, and we talked about it extensively, about what small business should have done or whatnot. But again, I think when you get hit and fear sets in, people kind of do things abruptly, and that happened. Now I think they know what it is. People are standing up and facing it and saying, okay, let's go through it.
You bet.
Which is a different thing. Number one, our condolences to you and to the citizens of Uvalde, and for the horrible incident that occurred a couple of months ago. It was just horrible. And our prayers go out with you always.
Well, thank you. I've lived there in Uvalde for 39 years. Off and on, and my children went to school there at Robb Elementary. Went to 4th grade there. Of course, they're in college now, but they went to 4th grade there. And we knew, I know, they know, everybody knows. I mean, it's a small community, 15,000 people, 16,000 maybe. And everybody knows somebody that was affected. We know some of the teachers, the parents, the grandparents, even some of the children. Some of them I know very well. So it's an unspeakable tragedy that you never think will come to your town, but it could. And I mean, there's no reason it couldn't come to any town. Unfortunately, it's just it's a madness.
Absolutely. That's why I always say this: we have to be around and get involved with our kids' lives, especially at that time. There's a lot of things that occur when you're a teenager growing up. A lot of different emotions happen, and I think we should be more vigilant than ever.
I love this expression that I read one time, and it was, what would you tell yourself if you could go back to when you were 15 years old? What would you say to yourself as an adult now? And the best one I ever saw was at junior high and high school will pass.
Absolutely.
And but it's not. It's like I mean, you and I were no different when we were in school, I'm sure, but that's everything. I mean, what the people in the classroom think about you, how well you did on some sports team. You just think it's every single thing in the world, and then by the time you're 25 or 30 years old, you realize that junior high and high school were. I mean, they might have been fun, maybe they weren't fun, but they're over.
Absolutely. And I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he says, who was your hero? And I said, what do you mean? Who was my hero? Who were your hero when you were growing up? Who were the ones that you wanted to look up to? And I said, well, my uncle and, my dad and my coach and stuff like that,
Sure.
kind of wanted to go that route. And he was talking, he goes, I heard this the other day, and he goes, this man say, I want to be, when I'm 30, I want to look back and I want to make my 15-year-old proud. And I stepped back and I said, okay. And he goes, so now that we're in our 50s, I want to make the 30-year-old proud of the decisions that I made back then is where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm.
And where am I going to be at 70 years old? The decisions that I do now is going to be who I'm going to be 70. Go, I understand your rationale.
Oh, sure.
And it's a good one. And then I think we should all look that way.
Mm-hmm.
I go, we're going to be proud of the decision we make now because it's going to affect you right now, back then.
Right.
And so with that, I think we should tell our kids that, be calm, be collective, do good in school, pay attention, be respectful. Because you're 17, all of a sudden you're 18. The laws and everything change. You can't be a hellraiser you were at 16 years old and do the same things at 18, 19, because all of a sudden now they have severe consequences.
Well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
I do, and that's what I always tell them if I ever have the opportunity to visit with kids at age that are upset about something. I said, Mija, remember this will pass.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that guy always says, just a generic expression is that when I was 16, my old man was the dumbest man on the face of the earth, and by the time I was 24, he'd gone to school. He'd gotten a lot smarter by then. I don't know what happened to him. 8 years later.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, man, I wish I would have understood what he told me back then and would have done what he told me instead of
Sure.
finding out the hard way. But sometimes you're hard-headed. That's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
But number one, I want to thank you. And I want to thank State Representative Richard Raymond as well, Senator Safarini, for keeping alive Laredo during this time, and also the county because they did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not out of it yet. But
no, we did our best to try to keep the businesses flowing, keep the restrictions to a minimum, make sure that we got our share of whatever benefits the state was putting out, and the federal government, of course, Congressman Cuellar helped with that, but Senator Zaffarini was very, very, very helpful, as was State Representative Richard Raymond. And it's a good team we have here right now in Laredo, we think.
I know it's actually, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that, because you guys kept a lot of people afloat, and that's what it means. And people that, there's a lot of businesses, when you look back, that they're not around anymore.
No, they're not, unfortunately.
And there were icons to the community, they're just not here.
Mm-hmm. For different reasons,
Absolutely.
Some of them just got tired of the fight. Some of them couldn't find help. There's a myriad of reasons why they're not there.
Absolutely.
We can only hope and pray that someone comes in and takes over that particular piece of real estate and starts another business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now what do you see from our post-COVID to the future? How do you see Laredo? How do you see South Texas growing?
Well, of course, Laredo is, poised because it is one of the fastest growing communities in the country. We didn't get treated well on the census, but most people didn't get treated well. We estimated we have 325,000 people based on previous decades here in Webb County. According to the census, it was 267,000, which was only a 5 or 6% growth in the last 10 years. And all you got to do is drive around South Laredo, which I represent, or the San Isidro area, which I represent, and you look at the rooftops and you say, this is wrong. They made a mistake here. But it wasn't just us; it was all over. But it was particularly bad in South Texas. And there's an economic loss when you undercount yourself in the census. It means something. But so anyway, Laredo's poised for growth because of the #1 truck crossing area in the United States, in North America for that matter. And so we're poised for growth. The state is well positioned too. The economy in South Texas is clipping right along, which of course, it's tied to the oil field a lot. So when the price of oil is pretty good, well, then the oil field does pretty well. We don't like paying for the gasoline at all, but the oil is better. Of course, the gas is down. The oil's still around $90 a barrel, so that might be a good combination now. But anyway, so the economy's pretty good. The farmers and ranchers are getting a lot of money for their commodities, but their input costs have gone up a lot because of inflation that kicked in after COVID. And then, of course, we've got a terrible drought right now, which, thank the Lord, we got a little rain this week, so that's going to help, but that's an issue. And the inflation problem, of course, is not unique to Texas or the United States. It's all over the world.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people talking about a recession. How do you think we'll come out of that one? How do you think we'll do? What do you think we need to do, or the state needs to do to help out? Because a lot of people are talking about that we're in the middle of one. Is it going to be a 6-month recession? Is it going to be a year recession? It's going to be like the Great Recession. There's a lot of people that are very nervous right now.
I know there are, and main thing from a business standpoint, we just don't want to get in the way. Again, I know I said that earlier, but we don't want to put any restrictions on people being able to make their living and grow their businesses. We want to make sure we have a very, very good support program in place for people who find themselves on hard times. I think that's important. I mean, as a society, we have a responsibility for people to help people that have no place else to go.
Absolutely. Do you think the state is going to be more not, I hate to use the word user-friendly, but more small business friendly?
I sure hope so. That's one of the problems is there's the people, a lot of times the people that need a program the worst or some type of assistance program are the ones that are least able to access it because of the time requirements to fill out the paperwork or applications, and they can't afford to pay somebody to do that for them, and they don't have time to do it themselves. So it's a real situation. There's a few places out there. You've got small business centers at the colleges that can help people with those types of things, and you've got your COG, local council of government, that can help. So there's resources to help, but it's not enough.
Okay. Is that something, this legislation, that we're going to try to push forward? Or?
I think so. In this next legislative session, which is going to begin on the second Tuesday and second week of January, we're going to be looking at a number of different issues. Of course, school safety is going to be a big issue. We have a budget surplus due to the high cost of oil and gas, because the state gets excise taxes on gasoline. So that's really in sales tax, and so things are more expensive. So anyway, the state has a budget surplus coming out. Anyway, they're going to be looking at school safety is going to be a huge issue. The big thing that I'm working on as chair of the Natural Resources Committee, we're having a big interim hearings next week. We're going to be working a lot on, there's a big push around the state for water infrastructure. And the truth is that a lot of cities, if not most of them, here in the state of Texas are no different than Laredo. They have water infrastructure issues. Aging infrastructure is what you're talking about, is old pipes, old plants, etc. And that's not unique to Laredo. It's all over the state. And most places simply don't have the tax base and the revenue stream to replace those by themselves.
Absolutely.
And so the state is looking at that. And we're going to have a big water session, I think, on infrastructure. In addition to that, you've got that IIFA, which was passed at the federal government, the big thing that the president got passed. And so there's going to be a lot of money coming into the states for that too, for infrastructure needs. And so hopefully we can get some of that in different water needs. But you got transportation issues, and you got water infrastructure needs that are going to be a focus of next session, and in addition to a lot of other things.
But those are priorities now. Laredo's been at it for the longest time. They've always been looking for a secondary water source. They haven't been able to concretely say this one or point one out, but
Yes.
they should have a long time ago. But there was a lot of different areas. But it just depends on who was in. So I think now what I'm looking at, or what you're seeing, is previous administrations were kicking the can down for the next one, and all of a sudden now people are saying, hey, enough of the kicking down, let's fix the problems now.
Well, when you get as many boil water notices as we've had, it'll get your attention in a
Absolutely.
hurry. People are all of a sudden saying, okay, we're willing to invest in this a little bit now. And that's the infrastructure issue. The secondary water source issue is a much more complex issue for Laredo, for us here in Laredo, because there aren't many, there's not very much groundwater in Webb County. Groundwater is water that's underneath the ground. Well water, a lot of people call it. There's not a lot of groundwater. And the groundwater that is here is very, very, very salty, and cleaning up is very expensive. There's no large sources of water out there nearby that you could pipe it from and the ones that are there are a long way and they're already accounted for. So, and you've got the river, and that's where we get all our water now. And so, in past administrations' defense a little bit, perhaps they shouldn't have kicked the road down on infrastructure for sure. But on the secondary water source, that's a tricky problem for Laredo and a lot of communities, but particularly us here in Laredo. So it'd be interesting to see what they come up with on that over the years.
I knew that at one time there was a gentleman from Carrizo that was coming down here trying to push,
He was, I know him well.
And,
I've known him most of my life.
and he was trying to push a secondary water source, but who knows whatever happened with that.
Well, it kind of, at least for the time being, faded away. He wanted to pipe a lot of groundwater from Dimmitt County down here. A lot of the landowners were not very happy about that in Dimmitt County. So, if you're taking water from one aquifer and sending it to somebody else, and when those people, have to drop down, that's going on right now with the drought. In fact, the place that I run a few cows on, I don't own it, I lease it, but we ran out of water last week. Yeah, and we're gonna have to lower the pump in order to, and that's all the area that's in Zavala County, all the neighbors there. Everybody's having to lower their pump right now. So that somebody comes in and wants to pipe a whole bunch of water out of an aquifer that's already lowering their pumps. The politics of that are very, very difficult. I mean, or not the politics, but it becomes controversial.
Absolutely.
So that's why I say there's no easy solution, or we'd have done it a long time ago.
And the best solution.
Or it would have been done. I say not we, but it would have been done.
Unless the state starts making some type of desalination plants on the Gulf.
Yeah, and there, that technology is there. It's still very expensive, but no, fact is, one of the interim charges that we have to look at next week no, we're not going to do desalination next week, but later on this year, before the legislature goes into session, we're going to have a desalination hearing either in Austin or down there in Corpus Christi.
Because I think that's going to end up. How can I put it? The attention's going to fade that way, and that's going to end up being the end game.
You're absolutely right, and most of the freshwater sources that are out there have been identified. It's very, very, very difficult to build a large reservoir anymore because of the environmental and property rights issues you run into. Practically impossible, and no large reservoirs really. Very few, maybe only one or two, have been built in the last 50 years. And so that leaves you with desalination and water conservation.
Absolutely.
And people talk about desal as something that's expensive right now. And as much as we think we conserve water, we don't conserve water when you look at people like El Paso and Israel and other places in the world that don't have water. Those folks know how to conserve water.
Absolutely.
And so
we have to start learning from them. We have to start. Let me put it to you this way: everybody likes a good shade tree.
yes.
But if we live here in Laredo, Texas, big old oaks aren't going to make it. You know what I'm saying? Well, they can, but it needs water. So you know what I'm
Well,
saying?
we have to remember where we live. I mean, this area, candidly, is classified as a semi-arid desert.
Yeah.
It hadn't been that way for the last 100 years because we've been able to tap groundwater and other sources in some reservoirs, and we dammed up the river in 2 or 3 places and those types of things. But when people have to do that, well then they will, and they'll amaze themselves at what they can do. But anyway, water conservation, desal, are your big sources of water out there.
Absolutely. You look at Arizona, you look at Tempe and Scottsdale in Arizona, the whole landscaping over there, it's built around that arid desert. And there's trees out there, but you're not going to have the same shade as you have the shade trees.
And they don't have
there's
the kind
trees, But
I got San Augustine grass in my yard, and I've got a sprinkler system, but they don't have those out there.
no, they don't have it. They don't have it.
No, they don't. They use xeriscaping
Yep.
and that type of thing, and you see some xeric. But in our part of the world, if somebody xeriscapes their yard, the neighbors get mad at them.
But we have
They
to
go, "Oh my God, what are you doing?"
maybe we should do this. You know what? Do this type of landscaping, and you get percentage off your water. You know what I'm saying, or something. We have to do those incentives and change the mindset. Everything's about understanding the story, but man, some people haven't heard the story, and once they get inside, then they start building their community. But we have to change it somehow, and unfortunately, they don't.
Yeah. Well, it's my grandfather on my father's side lived out in the country, and they had their water was very, very limited. They didn't have a water well. They had to haul it or pipe it in from a stock tank or something, and it was low sometimes. And they would conserve waters in ways that we don't even need to talk about. And so yeah. But it's the future. It's the future, and we'll do it when we have to.
Yeah, and it's coming to that point.
Mm-hmm.
What else would you like to say or bring out that we should be looking at what for?
Well, let's see. There's I like to call it there's a real movement amongst a group of folks in Texas. I call it the culture wars, and they bring it to the legislature, and I don't think it's helpful at all. Just people trying to tell somebody else what to do. But and there's so many things out there, Paul, that they come up, they become issues in the legislature that are what I call a non-issue issue. And people that have organizations that depend on membership and fundraising will stir the pot and bring something to the deal and try to get a law passed about it when it's really just people stirring up stuff. And so you're going to have cultural type issues, about public education, about libraries, school books, all of the different life choices that people make. So I think those fights are going to be with us at the school boards, at the city halls, and at the state legislatures and in Congress for years to come.
Yeah. There's a lot of changes going on there, and I get it. I see both sides of this of the spectrum that's going on there, and then there's a lot of differences in between. But I understand where they're coming from. I understand parents and the safety. I think now more than so. I think people were so forced into fear that they're retaliating one way or another.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So right now you're going to start
2 years of being forced into fear and put under house arrest, for lack of a better term. People have a lot of time to create a lot of crazy ideas in their head.
you know what I'm saying? So all of a sudden, this really wasn't a problem, but now it is, and now you're looking at me and they start telling 1, 2, 3, 4, and multiply. So by the time you get it, social media has it.
Yeah.
And
well,
I think we have to
social media drives that stuff.
And we have to just kind of step back and start thinking rationally.
Yeah. And I prefer to concentrate on bread and butter, meat and potatoes issues that affect our constituents in their daily lives. You know, what helps them make a better living, what helps them be able to drive back and forth to work better in terms of transportation, how to keep water in their homes and electricity on. You know, you want to make sure the lights stay on, unlike we had when we had the big freeze in February of 21, you know. So those are bread and butter, meat and potato issues that I think that our government officials ought to spend most of their time concentrating on, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And that's what needs to happen, you know. I think, number one, protect the future, protect our kids, number one.
Sure.
Protect the work environment. Make sure that everybody's living well.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that we need to do. And I think that's what we have to start focusing on. And then everything else kind of falls into place. And the school boards and the school board, you know, I've seen that issues with certain books, and they're fighting over a certain book shouldn't be taught. Yay, nay, you know, maybe it's not for that grade. Maybe it should be for another older grade. So, but nobody wants to compromise anymore. It's either my way or the highway kind of attitude, and that's when people start getting.
Yeah, it really is.
And we
then
have to look back.
And then you hit it on, you hit the nail on the head a minute ago when you said to social media, because they use social media to keep it stirred up.
Sure, absolutely.
And you know, a lot of times you can't confuse them with the facts, and as people get confused by the facts, and it's frustrating. So. But anyway, I appreciate you taking time to visit with me today.
No, I want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Come back anytime.
I do.
You know, and you talk about things that are happening and
You bet.
what's going on, what we should be looking out for.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe we'll get a chance to come back during the legislative session.
Absolutely.
It lasts for 140 days, and so basically it's 5 months, January through the end of May.
Well, we'll see you up there because, you know, we'll be working on something. But
Well, the city of Laredo is always real good about, they'll bring us a legislative agenda here in the next few months about things they think are important. Of course, water infrastructure is going to be a lot of it. The fact is they're going to testify at the hearing next week, and other needs that Laredo has. The county of Webb County and our county judge, Donald Tijerina, and his crew will bring us a legislative agenda and request. And the school district has already told us some of the things they thought were important. United in LISD, we had a good meeting with them a few weeks ago. So they were early to the table this time with some things that they want us to work. Us being Representative Raymond, Senator Zappedini, and myself.
I know that there's a bill that State Representative Richard Raymond almost passed last time, which was 4240, which was for interference with child custody, 2503. Hopefully it goes through there, because I think that's an important issue. Stop parental alienation, I think that should be.
It's a very important issue, particularly to the people that are having to live with it.
Absolutely. But unlike, I think it can change the world in the future. You know, because if you know, there's a lot of things that occur with that.
Well, I mean, it's indisputable that a positive involvement from both parents is better for a child.
Absolutely.
Now, if you got a parent that's shouldn't have ever had children in the first place, that's different, you know. But no, it's I think it's beneficial for children if they have positive role models from both their parents.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, folks, we're going to leave you with that, and thank you again for everything you do. And here's State Representative Tracy King, and you guys be safe, stay safe, and guess what? Hydrate, because the heat's coming on. Till next time, much peace.
Thank you, Paul.